For today's session, I am happy to introduce our speakers from Athabasca University. Dr. Cindy Ives, Director of the Center for Learning Design and Development and Acting Associate Vice President in Learning Resources.
Yeah, I've also lost Tracy's sound. It looks like she's dropped out. So in this case, Cindy and Steve, maybe we'll just continue on. I'm sure she'll be back in a second, and I'm sure she had a wonderful introduction for both of you.
So, Colin, shall I just go ahead then?
Yes, I think that's best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Tracy did give you my titles, and I think that that's plenty. I want to talk a little bit about how Athabasca University is integrating openness in course design. This is not so much about, Tony, you can't hear me. Can others not hear me either? Okay. Looks like, okay, I'm going to continue. We're not talking so much about open access in this particular presentation. We're really talking about moving to open educational resources and what our institutional strategy is. Now, last week, the names that you see on the slide in front of you, those of us, this group of CLDD colleagues, presented this presentation or a similar presentation to the Open Education Conference in Vancouver, and we got some good feedback on it. So I wanted to today acknowledge Dr. Mary Pringle, Roger Graham, Chris Manuel, who are my colleagues in the Center for Learning Design and Development, who have been together. We're really working on strategic implementation of openness in the course design process and therefore also in the course delivery process. I guess the first question is, why would we move to the use of open educational resources? And we're going to start with the classic problem in distance and online learning, which is low learner persistence. That's also described as high dropout rate, often high failure rate, a lack of engagement in courses and in course activities. And in distance and online learning, this is a typical problem. It's well documented. And we believe at Athabasca that interaction with content through the use of open educational resources provides a number of alternatives to students who are working through courses that help them to persist, help them to become more motivated and more engaged. And motivation and engagement have been shown to relate substantially to student success in learning, and so we're focusing on that. The learning activities approach that we use is a learning design approach to our course design activities. We focus on the design of activities and assessments that are aligned with the outcomes that are identified for a particular course. And the notion of activities is that the student is actually doing something with the content or with in terms of preparing their thinking about the content. And open educational resources can provide really interesting examples of ways of interacting with content. We also think that the use of OERs is an opportunity for growth in information and digital literacy among students. We know that while students are very comfortable with certain kinds of technologies, they're not necessarily comfortable with the searching for resources. They're not necessarily comfortable with academic applications. And the use of little technology bits technology-focused or technology-enhanced learning opportunities helps to grow their experience and their success with digital items as well. And we think that really OERs are a very practical, not too costly way to enrich learner experience with their online courses. And as some of you may not know, Athabasca University's courses are offered in an asynchronous, not just an asynchronous way, but in an unpaced way, which means that most of our undergraduate courses don't have cohorts. And so students don't have colleagues to share their learning experiences with as they would do in a regular paced course. Beyond that, Athabasca has this philosophical commitment to all things open, and you've seen presentations earlier this week that have talked about open access and open policies and other kinds of approaches to open, which describe the background of Athabasca as Canada's open university. Our biggest, maybe the biggest question is, how are we integrating OERs into the various courses? It's perhaps important to say that we're responsible for somewhere between 600 and 700 courses, and so we have a lot. Though we have a fairly large and diverse staff with lots of skills, we really do need to be busy all the time working on new courses and on the revision of older courses. So how do we do this? Well, there's a link here to the Athabasca, to the CLDD website, where we have posted the Open Educational Resources Plan for the 2 years to come and the report of our activities last year. We do the work that we do in CLDD about towards open educational resources, partly connected to the work that the UNESCO Commonwealth of Learning Chair is responsible for, and partly out of our responsibility to provide these interactive learning experiences for students. So feel free to visit that link. I'm not going to go there now because I don't know if it will work. But feel free to visit that link, download our plan, have a look at it, send me any feedback you have, ideas for improvements, suggestions, other things we can do towards the integration of openness in our course design processes. A couple of other things that we're doing outside of straight course design. The first is an inventory of the OER that we already have available in Athabasca University courses. So whether those OERs are activities or objects, whether they're full courses, whether they're quizzes, whatever they might be, we're engaged in a process now of identifying them, and we hope one day to be able to collect them in some kind of a database. Having said that, we have an open course website where some of these things are available, and you can reach that website through the website above that I've indicated. So our Open Educational Resources section also will link you to some sample objects, activities, and courses that we have either acquired or, in most cases, that we have produced ourselves. Another thing that we've just completed is a survey of perspectives of faculty and staff across Athabasca University about the use of OER in their courses. And we had a relatively high response rate, and last night I was looking at the preliminary results. We've got quite a lot of information that we can use as baseline data to compare in a couple of years, once we've done more activities around this, to see what the growth in understanding and use of OER happened to be over the course of time. So we're really looking forward to both using the feedback from this survey to helping us design further OER-based types of activities, and also in some cases training activities, orientation, some cases actual hands-on development activities, and then comparing future perspective down the road to see what kinds of changes we've had in the Athabasca University community. We are also having general conversations with academics in our course team meetings generally about digital resources for a number of reasons. We now have textbooks available in digital form, and students are requesting them. So finding ways to provide students with what they're looking for in terms of digital resources is part of the conversation. As well, we have copyright considerations and the cost, just the general cost of learning materials, learning resources, is escalating at a very high percent, certainly at an inflationary percent, which is higher than our enrollment growth and higher than our budget allocations. And so we have real concerns about, down the road, our ability to provide resources in our courses that actually meet students' learning needs effectively. We know that through the library and through direct links and through e-books, we can provide students with access to more materials and better resources in some cases than they have currently with the old Athabasca model, which is really about a course in a box. So we're moving, as we move Athabasca courses from print-based to more completely online, we are engaged in this strategic approach to thinking through how we should do this and aligning that with the university's goals. Excuse me. We do have some institutional understandings with other institutions, notably the Open Educational Resources University, which I think was described on, I think it was Monday's presentation this week. We have Open Courseware Consortium relationships, and so we are producing some open courseware, and you will find links to some of that material off of the website I mentioned before. If you would like the direct link, it's ocw.athabascau.ca. And there you'll find some of the enhancements for courses that we produced using Community Adjustment Fund money a couple of years ago. You'll find not just the resources themselves, but in some cases, links to download the code so that you could change the resources. And I would say, just to reiterate something I hinted at in the previous slide, our overall learning design approach to the design of courses is one that focuses on interaction with content. We're doing that right now because of the difficulty with students being able to communicate with each other, being as they're not progressing through a course in a cohort base. We are inspired to some extent by Terry Anderson's interaction theorem, which shows or suggests that students do just as well in their learning if there is high interaction on one of three dimensions: interaction with tutor, interaction with other students, and interaction with content. And our focus is really on interaction with content from the learning design approach. So those are some of the rationales for how we move forward in terms of integrating open into Athabasca's courses. This poster is a replication of a poster that we took to last year's Open Education Conference, where we talked about the government funding that we got and how we proceeded to develop 25 different open learning activities, mostly open learning activities, in 17 of our high enrollment courses. The images down the sides are images of some of them. So this one here, if you can see this, is a blood-brain barrier for a psychology course. And this Adventures of Ruby is a little video for plagiarism. And these three here have to do with a music course. So, so not only did we create these learning objects following the kind of methodology that's described in the poster and developed out of the theories that are listed in the center, But we have also are producing the background code and releasing that so that others can use the materials that we've created. Our focus at all times has been complex and difficult content in these high enrollment courses, and our focus has also been to release these items using Creative Commons licenses. We're engaged in a formative evaluation process, which is helping us to get student feedback. But one example I can give you, and it's highlighted right here, this is a learning tree for case studies in a biology course. When that course was in print, the pass rate was in the mid to high 70%, and it's now 94%. We have also documented lower withdrawal rate, lower failure rate, or at least, lower failure rate and a higher overall average in this course over the last 2 years. I'm not suggesting that what we're doing is completely responsible, because there is variability from year to year, but I think we are beginning to have evidence that this approach is actually working in real courses. Some of our tactical solutions are very technical, and for those of you who have technical background, you will understand what flash activity engines are, and cross-compilation, and migrating Flash to HTML5 and Java. These are some of the background coding things that we have learned, some of the lessons that we've learned out of this exercise to date. A second technical solution has to do with the learning that we discovered that we need to, in spite of the fact that Microsoft Office isn't an open source software, it is the software that most of our faculty are comfortable with, and so we need to use the Office applications for content development. It doesn't make sense to try and train people to use something quite different. So these are, again, some of our really specific technical decisions related to moving OER into our courses. And this learning tree that I just was talking about in that biology course was developed in a way that is not very easy to adapt. So we're going to revise the background code there so that it can accept Visio input, and it will be much easier for people to navigate and to change and adapt for their own purposes. So we have this philosophical commitment we have to all things open, and this strategic commitment we have to integrating openness in courses is supported with these very specific technical solutions. And I would say that our third tactical solution is really more about changing some of our other course development practices. And one of the biggest examples of that has to do with our copyright practices. And for those of you who are in Canada, maybe even in other countries, the copyright landscape is changing quickly in this country and in other places as well, in light of digital advances and new notions of ownership in the copyright world. One of the things we started out doing in the transition from print to online is to be requesting permission for online permissions only. We're not, for a while we were requesting both print and online permission. We do not have the budget to sustain that kind of a process. So our new process is to request permission for online use only, unless for some reason a particular item is not available. There are no digital permissions available. We are using fair dealing as appropriate, and we look forward to the new Canadian law that is going to allow fair dealing to be used in more extensive ways. And indeed, we have a fair dealing policy which clearly identifies what the processes are, what the documentation required is, and how you would go about doing an appropriate, legally compliant fair dealing assessment. And then in course development, we're also, as I said, we're using open access resources in addition to OERs, things like research materials, and textbooks through Athabasca University Press and other open presses. So we're not just using OERs, but we're also using other resources that are available through the library and through subscriptions and other places. So what we're doing is we're finding OERs that are available and adapting them or using them directly. We're creating our own, and we are sharing what we have produced using appropriate Creative Commons licenses. And I think it's probably important to say that Athabasca University was involved in the reanimation of the Canadian Creative Commons Canada affiliate, which had a kind of an official launch of its new website at a salon in Vancouver last week as well. So Athabasca is involved in a variety of ways, taking those public policy and philosophical commitments to a new level, which is the use of them integrated right within our own courses. The question about sharing whole course or just adapted, we're actually doing some of both, Gail. Mostly artifacts, mostly learning activities, but you will see on our OpenCourseWare site, the ocw.athabasca.u site, that we do have a few entire courses, and we have one course ready now for the Open Educational Resources University and 2 more in development. What have the challenges been to date? Quality issues, of course, implications for workload, both with respect to our own staff and also with respect to faculty, because while the workload overall may not be greater, it's different. And so there are training issues associated, and training can be stressful as much as extra work can be stressful. So there are challenges associated with using OERs, no question. Recognition and compensation relates mostly to faculty, but also to staff who are going sort of outside their comfort zones and who are going beyond the old ways of doing things. And we think that recognition is important for both staff and faculty, and it helps to keep them motivated towards doing things. So in connection with that, in another area of our interest in CLDD, we are looking at scholarship of teaching and learning activities, which help to recognize and provide awareness, a greater awareness for how we would use pedagogical and technological enhancements in courses. We are beginning to move into a systemic design approach. We're not quite there yet. As I said, we've got 700 or so courses to deal with, and we're still working in individual cases at this stage. Orienting and involving students. One of the arguments for OER is that students can produce them themselves and contribute to learning of others in that way. We have not gone that direction yet at this stage. And as I said, that we're doing this partly because of personal interest, partly because we have the right skill set, and partly because it's just the right thing to do. So far, our lessons learned, the one I referred to before about use common software in as much as is possible, because the faculty you're working with are unlikely to have advanced skills in programming. We are learning from errors in course design. We have had a couple of very enthusiastic attempts to integrate or to build courses based on OERs, and then had students complain that it was hard to navigate them. So we're trying to learn from our mistakes and do better overall design as well. We do need some systemic changes, both with respect to the way the learning resources are managed within the university, as well as the recognition and support for these activities. And while we do have some technical expertise right now for creation and adaptation, we don't have enough to do a really good job of this, and we're looking for more. There may be other lessons that we've learned that we haven't articulated yet. And I think that's it. So I think I'm within my time frame, and I even had the opportunity to answer a question. If there are others, don't hesitate to put them in the chat box, and I will hand it back to Tracy. or over to Steve, whatever you like.
Hello, this is Steve. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to just introduce myself as Director of Library Services at Athabasca University. And I'm just trying to forward here the slide. Okay, my topic is much open online content. And before I start, I would like to say a thank you, first of all, to UNESCO and to Rory for sponsoring this week activities. I'd like to thank the AU team, particularly Tony, Tracy, and Colin, for making sure everybody is connected and where they need to be and everything is loaded. And I'd also like to thank Cindy for a wonderful talk, and almost as a segue into what I'm going to talk about now, which is online content. And my assignment builds on a presentation I did earlier in the spring, and two of the questions in that assignment were what's out there and how do you find it. So that's where I'm going to be going now. And I'd like to say this presentation is a result of some explorations along the way, and it's been actually very fun in looking around and seeing really what's out there. And as we go looking to particularly the web, we know that there's information, there's resources, there's services. We know that in our libraries and institutions and on the web, much of what's out there is licensed, it could be purchased, and much more is open and freely available. We know that the web is dynamic and it's immense as a learning space. It's becoming more used as a teaching space, repository space, and certainly over the last while with social media, we know that it's a very collaborative space as well. This is a little wordly picture I put together. I actually just crafted a list of what's out there as far as on the web, open materials, open access in formats, and also what's out there in terms of OER. And you probably could look at this list, and if there's anything missing, please let me know. But what I tried to encapsulate here are the various formats and types of materials that we use or we would like to use, and we'd like to explore to see what's out there in terms of a resource for a course, a resource to help fulfill a course assignment, or just a research topic that we might be undertaking, even of a personal nature. This is some data that I pulled from a source in preparation for the May presentation, and I went back to royalpingdom.com, and I could not find the particular data that might take us more recent to 2012. But at that time, you'll see comparison of numbers here in terms of websites, 2009, 2010, photos uploaded, 2010. You'll notice at the bottom on the right, the number of hours of video uploaded to YouTube every minute, and I was astonished at the mere quantity of material that's out there in terms of photos, pieces of content, blogs, websites, and video resources. What I did find unique to 2012 was a little bit of a discussion here on this a website called Netcraft, and the question that I posed was what's out there, and the response is largely cut and paste from that site, but it's really a trick question because there isn't a definitive answer. And you'll see at the very bottom there with the magnitude of the development of the web and contributions, we're seeing that Well, as of March 2012, more than 500 million active websites. We see the rate of growth that the March numbers were up by 31.4 million over the previous month. So do the calculation there at the bottom. From March 12 to October 2012, how many does that tally? I came up with a couple 100 million, if my calculations were right. So we need to also, when we know that there's a lot of useful, beneficial content on the web, we as users need to be aware that there's individuals, there's activity on the web that also is used to cause interruption, nuisance, and a threat. And I know here at Athabasca earlier in the year, we had a compromise of our system which really did bring home this idea that the web is used for wonderful teaching and learning, but we need to be mindful in terms of our systems and our security and our operations, that we're mindful that there's others out there who are using the web for purposes other. Let me move on here now to some of the sites that I found, and this is going to be certainly not comprehensive. This is an overview. I found it interesting, and I just pass it on to you as types of places that I found. And you know, as a Canadian institution here, I think we need to be aware of our site, and that is Canadiana.ca. Collections across libraries, museums. We can find here books and journals, photo collections, maps, video, very much in the category of Canadiana. And you know, Library of Congress, digital collections, a host of types of formats that are there. Mostly here, and same with Canadiana, are historical collections, although there are activities at many of these locations where there's digitization projects underway, and many of these collections continue to grow. Largely historical, cultural, sources that are very useful in university and college work. This is just a capsule of the LC Digital Collections page, and you can see some of the headings there: history and culture online, newspapers, veterans history, early sound recordings. What I put it in the category of amazing stuff, if it suits the objective and the research topic that we have. Lest we think that only North America is involved in digital libraries, let's not be mistaken. There's collections that are being built, that are underway, being built, and are growing in other countries around the world. And this is a snapshot of the World Digital Library, and you can see there across the globe, various continents, and the number of, what this picture shows is the number of items in some of these collections. I think that actually is not items, but it is the number of collections, because I know there's more than, for example, 257 in North America. So around the world, digital collections are being built. One of the interesting sites is OER, Open Archives Initiative. This is a federation, if you will, of more than 1,100 institutional repositories worldwide. And this first started at, I think it was Michigan State, and has more recently been taken over by OCLC, and it's accessible through their site. More than 25 million pieces that are in institutional repositories can be searched, discovered, and accessed through OER. This was new to me when I found this, and we know that most of the globe is internet compliant and accessible, but eGranary is really internet in a box. 4 terabyte. At the time that I pulled this off, there were 30 million resources, indexed and searchable. Collection put together by librarians, by educational experts, and technical people that were behind this project to take the web, if you will, to a place where there is not durable or reasonable internet access. So a wonderful way to take the web to another place that is not as connected as many of us are. Yes, the eGranary digital library represents the efforts of authors, publishers, programmers, instructors, and students. Many people and many professions are behind this. This is a map snapshot of location installations of eGranary, largely Asia and Africa. Some in North America. I know there's a couple on the West Coast, one being Vancouver. In the quest for open materials, much of the open materials, I came across some wiki entries, and this is not so much to push Wikipedia or any of the wiki technology. However, they have a wonderful compilation here of digital library projects, more than 150, worldwide, many subjects, many different languages. We know there are collections and lists of open access journals. Wiki also has a tremendous listing of open access journals. Interesting to know, when you go to an open access journal, it usually is an individual journal. You're not necessarily getting into an indexed collection. I expect that will be changing, and that there will be some technologies coming which will improve that. Another wiki kind of site here was Online Encyclopedia. I know what we pay for some online encyclopedias. We know that encyclopedias are usually subject-specific, topic-oriented, and I looked around the site a little bit, and I was taken up with this Star Wars Wikipedia, and a very robust site. And since the time that I discovered this in March, the current status on the bottom right there shows just shy of 100,000 articles. There was about, I guess that number in May was about 92,000, if my memory serves me right. A great resource for somebody who's looking for information in history topics. Some of the participants and players in Star Wars. A wonderful compilation that continues to grow, continues to be added to. This was a site, you'll see the snapshot picture there on the left, and then some updated numbers on the right, October 18th, Encyclopedia of Life, Encyclopedia of Life. So the growth there, the contribution, number of pages in May, 750,000, more than 1 million in October. So many of these sites, only to make the point that many of these sites are very much engaged with, and there's active contribution happening. The number of partners growing from 180 to 220, 219. Some wonderful sites here, depending on what your objective is, depending how this fits with your curriculum, your pedagogy, and some of your objectives. Plant Experts, theplantlist.org, a growing collection here of plant species, photos, descriptions, some things here to check out. This is another site, another wiki site, academic databases and search engines. This is a combination of open sites and also commercial sites. However, in this list of about 135 to 140, 75 in this listing are freely available, open resources. I came across this site here called 200 plus killer digital libraries and archives. This was interesting. This was about 5 years old now, and some interesting stuff in there, very much like an old edition hanging around. Some links here you can come back to and look at after the presentation. Digital libraries, we think that there's this distinction between commercial sites and open sites, and some of our commercial sites do have a portion of their resource or their database location that some parts of it are open. I know IEEE, I did mention that here because it's one that does have an open component, and I expect there are others as well. Of course, as much as you try and locate an open piece that you want to find, the next one in the list is one that requires a subscription. So just to be aware that you can get a flavor. If you're not aware of IEEE or other sites, you can test out their site and their platform navigation and functionality. Let's not forget Flickr. I know we subscribe to some art collections such as Art Store and others. I don't know that, I didn't do the comparison there of the number of photos, but Flickr collection of 5 billion, more than 5 billion. Some great subsets of their collection. One of the questions we ask about the internet and my experiences, I found much here today, and I go back another time today and it's gone. And maybe you're aware or maybe you're not aware of archive.org. This is Internet Archive, and an archive location including the fascinating Wayback Machine. Wonderful collection of images, archives, recordings, more than 3 million texts. And this site continues to grow as well. I did a comparison, I don't know if I have it captured in this presentation, some of the categories and the live music, the audio, the video, the number of texts, all of those. If you go back a month later, you'll find that there's substantial growth. And if you're looking for something from yesteryear, some concerts, a wonderful site. Open materials that have been archived. These are some of the open access learning object repositories that have been developed along the way. Merlot has been around. It was probably one of the first ones. OER Wikiversity, Connections, open source, and we're trying to build the OER Knowledge Cloud here at AU. So many collections have been around, and there's many more that are emerging. Open access journals, this is a very scholarly site, and you'll find here access to journals, Journ directory, 3,000 links to art and humanities journals, OpenJGate. The whole point here is there's much activity in open access and scholarly publishing online. Under the Wiki Open Access Journal, two lists in addition to the main site here. They're multidisciplinary list and also their subject list. And what I found interesting on the subject list was Harvard Business School working papers. We know that Harvard Business School, some of their collections are quite expensive to license, and here in this open site, some of their working papers are included. This is some of the entries under the Open Access Journal multidisciplinary listing, just to give you a flavor here of many of the subjects, many of the disciplines, topics, language, geographic locations of open access journals. This is a subject list from the same site across the disciplines: business to East Asian studies, geoscience, chemical. So we see that open access represents a wide range of subjects and disciplines. This highlight is the Education Resource Global Law Observatory, scanning the world for open access scholarship and education, and there's a link. There's a link on this screen as well. Merlot has been around for many years. This is the snapshot. Maybe you're aware of Merlot, maybe not, just to include it in this presentation. Open source, current site, updated quite regularly. The last I was there. An interesting site on some of the practices and some of the principles in using open source and open access materials, and creating open courses and open education practices. Connections is another one. If you've been in this field, this is not new. You'll have seen this. In case you haven't, here's some exposure, another site to check out, connections.org. Excuse me, I can't say it here. Wikiversity. .org. A wonderful site here, fairly easy to use, easy to navigate, fairly decent functionality, and packed behind the page with great amounts of content. I put this together just to list, if you will, some of the successes over the years, and some of these were very new, particularly ERIC and Project Gutenberg. I remember when Project Gutenberg was rolled out, and the amazing thing about Project Gutenberg is that it is still functional. It didn't go away. It's been taken over. It's more robust than ever before. What I would put as the oldest digital library. And we have OER, the Internet Archive. Collectively here, we see that there's a very wide collection, very deep, very relevant, very comprehensive amount of resources on the web. I put resource discovery services at the bottom there as what I would label as an emerging success. Much of the content is searchable, that site specifically, and some of the emerging resource discovery services are becoming very effective in bringing the diverse number of sites into one search location where we can discover materials and access materials through one portal search box. So this is an exciting development. Already I would put it under the category of success. This is a list of some OA and OER sites that was passed to me. I simply replicated it into this list. I have to say I went to some of these and I had difficulties getting in. So one of the challenges, which I have a slide later, one of the challenges is the durability of sites and the durability of links within sites, and the extent to where you can really get to where you think you're going and the URL that's been given to you. So try some of these, and I'd be interested in what your experience is. I didn't go very far. I just checked a couple and had a range of responses. I put this slide together because sometimes we ask the question, how do I find it? And as much as we like to promote efficient information-seeking behaviors, you'll see here that actually the way we find things sometimes is we truly do stumble onto it. We try to search it, we trace it, we find it. Sometimes something's been referred to us, so we go after it. This is more of a think piece. Just when we ask the question, how do I find it? And ideally, we would put a search strategy together, and we would search it in a standardized way. But when we think of finding materials, finding information, sometimes we conclude, I conclude that it doesn't come down necessarily to a prescribed search. And I have to admit, much of what I have found, I actually have stumbled onto it, or I have just kind of been checking things out. How do I find it? Part of the challenge, part of how we find it, or if we find what we're looking for, is that there are many challenges. We know that access, for example, may be here today and gone today. Many things are archived, more difficult to find. We know there's formats, functionalities, platforms, standards, technologies, even some of our practices. This list is not a final list, just some of the elements that pose a challenge, and there are many challenges to finding materials. Some considerations, and this is not unlike Cindy's, some of her things on her list. The analysis, the application, we need to consider some of our objectives are pedagogy to the extent that elements are interoperable. Scholarly, is there durable access? These are just some questions to ask. Is the access sustainable? And many times we'll apply an evaluation mechanism or a review process to help us consider what to use. And while my list starts with an A, it also ends with an A, and that A is at the end on the right, archivability. And I think it's so important that we do not depend on a website that just stands alone, but what are the practices for the archiving, the preservation of that resource, particularly for instances or times when we want to have assurance that that resource is available for a period of time. Ideally, it would be available to search for years to come, and that's one of the components of building digital collections. That concludes my talk. Very quick, certainly not this is not a final presentation, and I hope it has been useful in stirring some of your thinking and maybe some of your practices as you consider much of the open content that is online. I thank you. Thank you to all the participants for tuning in to the presentation today. So Tracy, I'll turn back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve and Cindy, for two very excellent presentations today. These presentations and others will be made available on the Open Access Week website. We have about 5 minutes left for questions. Before we begin questions, though, I'd like to announce today's lucky virtual door prize winners are Isabel and Jeanette. Please send me your mailing address. I will add your names and my address down into the chat box just on the side. Now we do have a couple minutes left for questions if anyone wants to type anything into the chat box. I will say that there was a question that came up earlier, Steve, that perhaps you could address. It came up during your presentation. Caroline put in then, I have had an experience with accessing web-supported libraries where I received a Homeland Security warning. It worried me as it stated that if I continued to move into the site, I would be subject to Homeland Security scrutiny. Should I be worried when I use these, what I assume is an open access link? And is it really open access if I must succumb to such government scrutiny, if this is so? So that question came up during Steve's presentation. So I'll turn the mic over to you, Steve.
Tracy, it's Cindy. I'm thinking that maybe Steve doesn't have an answer to that, and maybe we could, in fact, go to Pete and allow him to, but you'd have to give him the microphone, and I don't know whether you're set up to do that.
Colin, do you want to set Pete up with the microphone for a minute?
There we go. I think the microphone should be available to participants as well now.
Okay, let me know if you can hear me, I guess. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, okay. So I don't want to take too much time, but just really briefly, that Communicate OER is a project we just launched at the Open Education Conference last week. It's a year-long Hewlett Foundation funded project through the University of Mississippi, which really aims to rally the community around open educational resources in improving relevant content on Wikipedia. So the aims are really twofold. One is to make sure that Wikipedia, where so many people go for information about OER and related concepts, has good information. And the other goal is to build a community of practice within our existing community around keeping that up to date, so that it's a self-sustaining project. Yes, we do have a project site. I made a link. It's a page within, or a collection of pages within Wikipedia. I'll just type it in again here. Oh, I guess I didn't have the right window. So I'll type it in again, and I guess if people have questions, feel free to contact me. I don't want to take too much time on this call, but I appreciate your letting me give it a mention.
Tracy, it's Cindy. Could I just sort of make one final comment? And that is that with open materials, whether they're open access, whether they're open educational resources, whatever they might be, I think one of the key concepts, one of the key conditions is always academic quality. And the challenge, of course, is in finding the time to determine what the level of academic quality is, but academic quality is the bottom line.
Okay, thank you very much, Cindy and Steve. This ends today's presentation. Athabasca University's Open Access Week noon hour presentations will continue tomorrow. You can join us back here, same time, same place. Thank you very much. We will now stop the recording for this session. All Open Access Week presentations